I want to welcome everyone back to the channel. For those that are new to it, please like, please subscribe. And like I said, if you like, leave a comment. I know I might have said it's not about that, but for me, it's about what the guests would like to hear. If they want to hear a comment, they want to be liked, it's go ahead and do that for the guest as well. So my next guest doesn't really need any introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. So what is your name and your tribal affiliation?
Thank you so much, Sal, for inviting me. My name is Madonna Feather Cruz. My Lakota name is Wichapi Luthanwe, which translates to many stars woman. I am an enrolled member to the Round Valley Indian tribes on my mother's side, and I'm Lakota on my father's side. And just great to be here today.
Oh, thank you. So the question is, who are your people? You want to acknowledge your family members. I know you're one of a kind Lakota and Pomo, but if you want to acknowledge your family, now's the time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so my mother, her name was Denise Knight. Her mother was Norma Knight. Her father was Bill Knight. And my grandmother was Round Valley Indian tribes. My grandpa was from Yokeo Rancheria, Kaya area, Mendocino County, and my father's from Lakota tribe. The feather necklace Tayushpe, that means family, also the means family on my father's side, Lakota.
And if you want to share a little bit about your childhood upbringing on the reservation and making that transition into off the res, what was it like growing up as a young native on the res, female, and then going into an urban city? They would say an urban Indian.
Sure. So as a child, as a little child, we lived in Napa, California. My grandpa was the first Native American Pomo man as a psychiatrist in Napa. So we lived in Napa. We would go back to Yokeo Rancheria, stay there for a little while, come back to Napa, go up to Cobolo. We did a lot of back and forth. And as a child, I liked it better on the reservation. I liked it better out on the land. In Napa, there were not very many Native American kids. So being around the tribe, on the rancheria, it felt safe. It felt better. In the city, there was more teasing and bullying going on. And I feel like, when I would go home to the reservation, it would be nice to be spending time with family, with cousins, playing in the creek, going to the river, having watermelon, going to the ocean, camping, and then it would seem like sometimes some of the relatives, they would be mad that I was leaving, like I got to get out of the reservation. So then sometimes I would be bullied in that way. And so like now I live in the city, but I still always want to go home. I want to go home to the reservation. And I'm not bullied anymore. So that's something that's good, right? But I just feel like as Native people, we like to be where our families are, where our relatives are, where our land is. But I'm also grateful that I got the teachings from like my grandma, my grandpa, how to work, how to, maintain your home, how to maintain your family. Family was very, very important to my grandfather. And, I was taught many things from the grandparents. And one of the major things that I take away from them is, when you start your family, you stick with your family. And today, I have a 29-year-old son. I have a 19-year-old daughter. I'm still married to their father. I like him. Those are very important teachings that I got from my grandfather. Work hard. He was also in the service. He was a staff sergeant in the Army. So I'm just grateful that I had those teachings from grandparents.
Oh, and it's also noted that your family is deep rooted in the American Indian movement. If you want to share, if possible, and tell a little bit of story about being, involved in such a heavyweight activism family.
Sure. So, I think back to, as my childhood, and one of the homes, that the family owned, it was in Napa, on Chelsea Avenue. And they would have meetings there at the house, right? At the kitchen table. And, I remember that my Uncle Russ showed up. He was there to borrow a car from my grandparents to go from Napa to Berkeley. They were going to do something there. And I think it's like the Pena Cultural Center or something now, right? Because it was there for a long, long time. And so Uncle Russ showed up, Russell Means, American Indian Movement, showed up, got the car, and I'm hearing them as a little girl, like I must have been 4 or 5. I'm hearing them talk like they're getting ready to go. He's taking my Aunt Myra Knight. They're going to go do whatever they were going to present there. So I go and I hide in the car. I hide in the back of the car, under a blanket. So I got to go, so I got in a lot of trouble, but, there were a lot of meetings that happened, AIM meetings, Black Panther meetings, Cesar Chavez. I remember them meeting, with my grandparents. So I, growing up as I'm born like Pomo in Lakota. There's not very many of us, right, that are Pomo in Lakota. But I'm like eternally grateful, it's like for me, for my brothers, we're born into the American Indian movement. We're AIM babies, right? And there's quite a few AIM babies, right? And I'm grateful to know who my family is, what they've done, what they've stood for, because if it wasn't for the work that they've done, I couldn't be doing the work that I'm doing today. And not everybody liked what the AIM movement was doing and what they wanted to accomplish. But I love my family. I love my mother's side of the family. I love my father's side of the family. And yeah, I'm grateful for the work that they did.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Thank you for sharing. In 1972, the Sako Indian Council was created. What was your family ties to that, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure, I'd love to. So again, Sako is in Napa. And again, my grandparents lived there. They had homes there. And my grandmother was Norma Knight. Fulwilder was her maiden name, from Round Valley. And she was one of the first to get it up, get it going, get it started. This dream that Charlie Toledo has carried on in honor of my grandmother. I grew up hearing meetings, right? Grassroots meetings. Susquehanna Intertribal Council now is grassroots. And, again, if it wasn't for the ones who came before me, we couldn't do this work today. We couldn't do it safely if it wasn't for the sacrifices that they took to just lead the way and teach, that's so important, that my grandmother was able to teach things to Charlie. Jenny Marufo from Kashaya was able to teach Charlie. And I just was a little girl. I wasn't even born yet in 72, but I'm 3rd generation of Susquehanna. I have 2 kids that are, 4th generation involved and support. So yeah, I'm grateful for my grandmother and for Susquehanna.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah.
And the question is now that I asked you, like, what are you doing now to be active in the Native community? What are you doing to help out the Native community?
My first thought when you asked me that question is I think of the Native students graduating high school. When we lived in Napa and my son was graduating high school, he was at Vintage High School for all 4 years. Very racist school towards Native Americans, in my experience. He was not allowed to wear his regalia, which is, you know, a beaded cap, eagle feather, most highest honor to have, right? As a Native, that eagle feather. He wasn't able to walk with regalia, and I was very upset with that. Moving ahead in some years, coming to Santa Rosa, it took me about 4 years to have the code changed for Native American students to be able to wear their traditional regalia, or even Pacific Islander or Mexican, Azteca, whatever their traditions are, that they're able to wear that regalia. So that changed, and my daughter was able to 2 years ago walk across with her traditional regalia on. And that code's changed for all that will come after her, right? And so when I think about what I'm doing, I'm a helper. I help people, I help my community, I help my family, my immediate family, in just sustaining what we have, the cultures that we have, is what I do. You know, educating the educated who don't know anything about us is something that I do often. In some of the stories, you know, that we have gone through, you know, I'm a third generation boarding school Native. And so the horrific things that have had to happen, you know, again, if it wasn't for the ones that came before us, we wouldn't be able to do what we do today safely. And so what am I doing? I serve on boards. I keep my family together, attend our cultural ceremonies, whether they be public, you know, or private, for Natives only. In just being of service. I feel like our ancestors were always helpers. They were always teachers. They were always taking care of children. You know, I really care about our children, whether they're my own 2 kids or your kids, you know, protecting women from men who are abusers. You know, there are people out there in this community that we live in that are not safe around children. And because of my grandmother, I've seen her at Round Valley Indian Days. I remember her dragging out guys that were not safe. So I'm carrying on that tradition. If there's a known man that is not safe, or woman, they're gonna leave the event. So that's what I'm doing.
That's great. That's great. And I'm glad to hear that you're carrying on your grandparents' tradition, and that's what it's about: culture preservation and carrying on. They're carrying that baton and they're passing it on, and it's up for us, the next generation, to pick it up and pass it on to our kids, and so on and so on. And that way, this thing that we're doing keeps on going on for, you know, as long as we exist. I have two more questions.
I think it's just so important. And you know, I've met with different say police or educators. And, you know, I take a lot of pride in my children. My son is 29 now. He's never been to jail. He's never had a ticket, you know, and sometimes when I'm talking with non-natives about that, they're like, well, how's that even possible? Well, it's possible if you love and instill these teachings, right? These grandma and grandpa teachings. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. So we got 2 more questions. Our life's very short on this earth. And we're all going to make that spiritual journey sooner or later. What is the thing that you, Madonna, that you want to be remembered for? When they talk about you 50, 100 years from now, what legacy, what do you want to be remembered for?
You know, I would just throw it back to my grandma, you know, to my mom, to my aunties, to my uncles, working hard, being a helper, being somebody that is trusted, being somebody that, you know, if you need food, if you need help, like I'm here to help. I'm here to guide. I'm here to teach. I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I want to be remembered for being a good person, for loving my family, for loving my husband, for loving my community, for my city, being of service, being somebody who stood up for what was right, standing up for people who may have not had their voice yet, who have not found their voice yet, and just serve the community, serve my creator. That's what I would want to be remembered for.
That's great. That's great. The final question is, any words of wisdom to the next generation, to our future? What do you want to tell them?
To the future, I would tell them, things that my grandmother and grandfather and aunties and uncles, work hard. And it's not only like the physical, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but it's financial. We have to be taken care of. We have to be able to sustain our own families. I would say to choose wisely of, like I tell my own kids, like I was told, when you have your family, that's your family. You stay together, you work together, you love each other, support each other, support your community, support your family, stick up for what's right, do what's right, be a good person, continue your education, and it doesn't have to be, in a college. It could be, with that elder who has that knowledge that, institutions don't have. How I would say have fun, travel, and for our Native youth, like we can work anywhere and go and travel anywhere we want to do. And yeah, I'm so proud of my own children. They're doing really good in life and giving back and doing those things. So living by example and showing others that it could be done. That's what I would tell our next generation.
Thank you, Madonna. I want to thank you for taking the opportunity or taking the time out of your day to share some information about you, tell your story a little bit. And for those out there, please like, please subscribe, leave a comment. And for those that haven't told someone you love them, go ahead and tell them you love them. I want to tell everyone out there, be safe and have a good day.
Oh.